The Lone Wolf. Tensions were high in the days following Mr. Murphy's accident. Duncan stayed far away from the other engines, and they made no attempts to speak with him. "Come on, old boy," Duncan's driver said. "I know you're upset, but you can't let it be the black cloud that follows you around. You should explain yourself to the others. It'll be a solitary life here if you don't make any friends. You can't be the lone wolf forever." Duncan huffed, but deep down he knew his driver was right. One night, the engines returned home to find Peter Sam beaming at them. "Edward came past our shed today. He said the vicar is bringing his Sunday school children for a picnic in the woods tomorrow. It would be too difficult for Trevor to bring them, so one of us will get to take them in a special train," he exclaimed, bursting at the seams with excitement. "Well, the thin controller will choose me, naturally," said a proud Sir Handel. "I'm the grandest engine he has." "Actually," came a voice from behind them, "you'll be doing double duty for the day. You're not quite finished making up for Peter Sam's accident." The others chuckled as Sir Handel blushed. "Peter Sam," continued the thin controller, "I know you've been longing to get out of the shed, so I want you to help take the children tomorrow." Peter Sam was ecstatic, but a little worried. "Will that be all right with the state of my funnel, sir?" The thin controller smiled again. "I've arranged it so you won't have to do the majority of the work. You'll be at the front, and Duncan is going to push from behind." Duncan was puzzled, but before he could say anything, the thin controller spoke again. "I told you I was going to cure that impatience of yours. You will help Peter Sam with the train and wait at the picnic site until the children are done. If you're reckless with the children, you'll have the vicar and myself to answer to." With that, he strode away to his office. Once he was out of earshot, Duncan's grumbling began. "Pah! Children. Never did like him," he sulked. Peter Sam was surprised. "But they brighten my day! They love taking our numbers and asking about our work, and they always leave with smiles on their faces." Duncan wasn't moved. "The men at the factory brought their children to work sometimes. They were nothing but trouble. Touching tools, going places they shouldn't, bothering us while we tried to do our work. You are welcome to 'em." Peter Sam was cross, but decided to say no more. He was determined to make sure Duncan didn't ruin the picnic. The next day, the two engines were waiting for Edward to arrive with the children. As Sir Handel needed coaches for the regular trains, they only brought Lucy and a separate guards van. Lucy was very proud. She had been polished and cleaned, and even made Agnes feel a little jealous. Soon, Edward arrived, and the children spilled out of the coaches, dragging the vicar along the platform. Duncan rolled his eyes, but Peter Sam greeted them warmly. Once they piled into Lucy, the guard blew his whistle. "Mind how you go," Peter Sam advised sternly as they cleared the platform. Duncan harrumphed and set to work. In what seemed like no time at all, they arrived at the picnic site. It was in a forested area, and the trees provided a blanket of shade from the baking sun. The vicar laid down a checkered blanket and spread food out on plates. "There'll be time for activities as well, but please stay close. I don't want any of you to leave my sight," he said. The children all promised to behave, and the picnic commenced. Soon the food had been consumed, and some of the children began to play. The vicar found keeping his eyes on all of them was not an easy task. While he was preoccupied, a little boy slipped away towards the back of the train. Peter Sam was dozing, so he hadn't noticed. Duncan simply wasn't paying attention. The boy found a mound of dirt and sticks, and began to silently amuse himself. The forest was home to many different kinds of animals. They seldom revealed themselves, as the sounds of the engines made them skittish. Today, however, would prove to be an exception. A fox was creeping through the bushes. It had strayed from its pack and was growing hungry. It turned its nose up. A pleasant scent wafted through the air. It advanced a little further until, just through the trees, it could make out a tiny figure sitting on the ground. That must be food, it thought to itself. Very slowly, it made its way towards the boy. Duncan was grumbling quietly to himself when, suddenly, he heard something snap. His eyes darted to the left, and he saw the little boy playing by himself. "Old nuisance," he thought. He was about to turn away when another snap was heard. It sounded like a twig breaking in half. He looked at the boy's sticks. They were still intact. Then Duncan saw a bush shaking. He watched intently as the head of the fox emerged, its tongue hanging out of its mouth. Duncan knew at once what was happening. It was going to attack the boy. Duncan had to act fast. His crew were in the brake van eating lunch with the guard, so there was no way they could get out in time to help. Duncan took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and with a mighty effort, he blew his whistle as hard as he could. The shrill tone echoed throughout the forest, bouncing off the trees like a ping-pong ball. The children jumped. The vicar nearly fell over in surprise, and the crew stumbled out of the brake van, landing on top of each other. Peter Sam was shocked too. He woke at once and jerked forward, derailing himself. Perhaps none were more startled than the little boy. He sprang up like a jackrabbit and ran back towards the other children. When Duncan opened his eyes, he was relieved to see his plan had worked. The fox was darting back into the woods, whimpering loudly. The vicar had seen everything, and he was at a loss for words. He turned to the mischievous little boy. "You almost put yourself in great danger, Charles. You disobeyed my orders, and if it weren't for Duncan, who knows what would have happened to you?" The boy quietly sobbed and apologized. The vicar then spoke to Duncan's crew. "Your engine is a hero," he proclaimed. "The thin controller can rest easy knowing his new acquisition is really useful. Now, before any other animals decide they'd like a snack, I think it's best we go home." "Seems we have another matter to attend to first," said the guard. The men looked at Peter Sam. With the help of the vicar, the men were able to quickly lever him back onto the rails. The two engines were soon on their way back to the station. The sun was setting, and as they neared Croven's Gate, they found Edward waiting for them. The children told Edward all about how Duncan had scared off the fox, but as they were running late, the old engine didn't have a chance to commend him on a job well done. Duncan said nothing in the sheds that night. He had heard none of the praise directed his way, and was convinced he ruined the afternoon. He was certain his whistle had frightened the children, and to add to that, he caused Peter Sam to derail, which made the children late returning home. He feared his days on the Skarloey Railway were coming to an end. As he drifted off to sleep, he sighed, wondering what the thin controller would say to him the next day.